no Esper Deathblade, no show and tell. What do you think about that, Ruben?
I think that just speaks to the metagame of this area.
Okay.
As we saw yesterday, these players in this area prefer their counter spells. They prefer their control decks, not so much a combo metagame. And we see that here with the Rug Delver mirror match near the top.
Okay, sure. So it's going to be Jacob leading off with a Volcanic Island and a Ponder. So Ponder's interesting because Jacob also has 3 copies of a Gitaxian Probe in his deck.
Yes.
So he has Ponder, he has Probe, and of course he has Brainstorm.
Yeah, being able to add even more sorceries to the deck is a big deal for Rug Delver, trying to get as many cards in the graveyard, first of all, but also specific types for Tarmogoyf.
Exactly.
Jake Mondello, his opponent this round, is also on Rug Delver. Slightly different list, does not have the Singleton Snapcaster Mage. He has a couple of interesting one-ofs, only has the 1 Gitaxian Probe, but has it as a Dismember and a Forked Bolt, in addition to 3 Spell Pierce.
No, does he have any copies of Submerge? Because I know Jacob Wilson has 3 copies of Submerge. What about Jake?
Absolutely. After sideboard, Jake is also going to have 3 copies of Submerge.
Okay.
So a very, very... If it wasn't a mirror match before, it certainly will be after sideboard with the very similar sideboarding plan.
Yeah, and the matchup is very difficult. You have to play around Spell Pierce, you have to play around Daze, you want to play around Submerge after board. You have to pretty much figure out what's important and how to play your game around that. So there is a Goy from Jacob. Do you think it's going to resolve?
Well,
it does.
Sometimes you just have to jam it and hope that and make them have it.
All right.
So currently it's a Hurloon Minotaur. It's a 2/3. Jake Mondello is no stranger to this deck, actually. He's I've seen him play this at many opens. He doesn't have a top 8 with this in Legacy, but he does have 2 standard top 8s that I know of.
Yeah, he's quite the standard specialist. I know him. He's not too far from my area, from Connecticut, just an hour or so north of New Jersey. So definitely a solid young player making his way on the Star City circuit.
And so now we have Gitaxian Probe. Jake gets to know to play around Daze at this point, as well as a pair of Lightning Bolts, which is why Jacob Wilson decided to go aggro here.
Exactly. Now, it is difficult because although he knows there's Daze in Jacob's hand, Jacob could just hide the Daze with the Brainstorm, shuffle it away, and now Jake might still play around it. So it's kind of a free roll.
Yeah. And now we have Dismember, which is very powerful magic card, especially in this mirror. The one of in Jake's deck is going to be able to take down basically the only clock that Jacob has access to.
All right. Now Jacob will just pass a turn, and on upkeep, it looks like he's going to try to waste that Volcanic Island.
Yep, and he's going to float the mana in response.
There's a Stifle.
Stifle on the fetch land.
Lucky draw there.
Wow. Getting both of the lands. Jake manages to find another land on top of his library, though, so he's not completely blown out here.
And knows Jacob still has Bolt, Brainstorm in hand, so I wouldn't be surprised if Jacob does a, in response to this fetch land, or maybe in response to a Ponder or whatnot, uses that Brainstorm.
Yep. Jacob also still has the Daze in hand, I believe, so anything that Jake plays here is going to be severely hampered. I think that Jake might just sit back and relax on whatever he has.
Yeah, I think so too. And Jake ended up using his fetch land there because A, he wants to play this Delver, I guess, into the Daze.
No, into the Lightning Bolt.
Into the Lightning Bolt. If you're Jacob, do you bolt there, do you think? Or do you like
I definitely like the Lightning Bolt.
Okay.
You want to be able to daze things like Nimble Mongoose.
Oh, sure, yeah. That's definitely
a much tougher threat to deal with. Also, as you see in Jake's hand, he has a Tarmogoyf that he'll be able to try and resolve if he so chooses this turn.
Yep.
Probably won't, since the Daze still resides in Jacob Wilson's hand.
Yeah, there's a Wasteland drawn. He's going to play a Nimble Mongoose. So Jake played this game pretty well for being on the back foot. Doesn't look so bad for him right now.
Yep, and I think that Nimble Mongoose is already a 3/3.
And
very shiny sideboard. Can't really tell the numbers down there, but it's at least 6. I think it is 7.
Yeah, it's going to be 7 with this Wasteland.
Yep.
Do you want to take out that Volcanic Island or that Trop?
Well, you know that Jacob has the Lightning Bolt.
Sure.
So it is tempting to take out the Volcanic Island to strand that in his hand.
Sure.
If you do not have an answer to Delver of Secrets, then you would definitely take out the Greenland.
Okay.
Because another creature would just spell complete game over at that point.
Sure.
Taking out the red source in this case is better, mostly just because he can try to race.
All right, so there's an upkeep Brainstorm from Jacob Wilson. He wants to make sure that Delver flips, doesn't want to leave up the chance. And it looks like Jacob does have a Misty Rainforest there as well, so he's going to have to figure out what exactly combination he wants to do here.
Yep.
You know?
He gets to bury any one of the 2 cards that Jake already knows about and put the other one on top.
Yeah, and you can tell Jacob's a real thinker. He has great results. First at a Grand Prix, second at a Grand Prix. So a solid player overall. And he also went 8-0 at the Invitational in Los Angeles for the Legacy portion. So,
wow.
And I believe it was Rug Delver, so he's definitely very familiar with this deck.
Yep. A lot of people were saying that the end of Rug Delver was coming soon with things like Cavern of Souls, Voice of Resurgence, and there's lots of different things that can take down Rug Delver, and Rest in Peace especially. Terminus is a big problem
Deathrite
as well.
Shaman.
Deathrite Shaman is probably the biggest problem for Rug Delver, but both of these players, undefeated, 50% of the undefeated players left in the tournament on Rug Delver. Just goes to show you can't ever count them out.
Yep. There's a Ponder, and Jacob's going to use that Daze, and Jake will attack for 3 right here.
Yep, not a great spot for Jake. Sitting at 3 life.
And there it is.
Lightning Bolt.
All right, so on to game 2. That was a fast game.
It was. Both these players played very efficiently. Jake, unfortunately, sort of got ahead of himself, I think. Jacob had the plan already in place, despite Jake knowing what the Gitaxian probe, with the information from the Gitaxian probe, and Jacob did not have the information. He knew that his only line of play was to try and deny Jake of mana.
Exactly.
And so Jake Mondello ended up with no lands. Jacob Wilson ended up with the only mana sources in play for a couple of turns, for at least 1 turn, I think.
Yeah.
And even if he had mana sources in play, Daze and Lightning Bolt hampered Jake's development to the point where Jacob could just win with the solitary Delver of Secrets.
Yes, and when you are playing against Rug Delver, it's so difficult to play against it just because you don't want to play into their strategy. You don't want to play into a Daze. You don't want to play into a Stifle. You want to make sure you have enough lands to play around something like a Wasteland, for example. So it's definitely really difficult, and I would like to see if Jake and Jacob will kind of know exactly what the other person is trying to do, because they're both very experienced players with Rug Delver, and it's just shown here because they're both 6-0. So it's definitely really good.
Absolutely, and looking at their sideboards now, they have slightly different sideboards.
Okay, Wilson over here, Jacob Wilson, he has 3 Submerge, he has 1 Jace the Mind Sculptor, he has Click, Flusterstorm, Sulfur Elemental, Rough and Tumble, Pyroblast, Life and Loan, Grafdigger's Cage. Wow, he has a Zern Orb.
Wow.
That's really interesting. I think he's going to bring in Zern Orb in this matchup.
That's certainly possible. It's one of these matchups that where the lines are so razor thin that you can end up with only the 1 creature in play and gaining 2 life, 4 life,
and it's
6
also
life.
nice to kind of combat Wastelands, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to waste your Tropical Island. Sure, I'll just gain 2 life. And especially with Lightning Bolts when they're damage racing. Zern Orb, I haven't really thought about Zern Orb for the Rug Mirror match, but I think that's something really nice. I just watched a game where Zern Orb won the game because the opponent had a bunch of creatures and he had a Life from the Loan, he has Zern Orb. He was playing lands, so obviously Zern Orb fits nicely in there.
Sure.
But here, that's something interesting.
Yeah, Jacob Wilson's sideboard is bizarre to me. He's got some very interesting choices. In addition to the Zern Orb, he also has a Jace the Mind Sculptor, which I don't think I've ever seen in the sideboard of a Rug Delver sideboard, and it certainly isn't going to come in here. Jace not at its best in this matchup.
Yeah, it's really weird too because he only has 6 lands, 6 colored lands. Then he has the 4 Wastelands. Then he has the 8 sack lands. So total, he only has 18 lands. And those Wastelands, you actually want to kill your opponent's land. So how reliable is he going to cast a Jace? Well, maybe against something like Shardless Bug or Esper Deathblade, where the games might go really long, you might want Jace.
Absolutely. Yeah. Over on Jake Mondello's side of things, he also has the Submerges. Those are likely going to come in. He also has 2 Divert. Divert is a card that pops up every once in a while. It's very, very good for Abrupt Decay.
Sure.
Mostly for the Shardless Bug deck, because Abrupt Decay, Ancestral Vision, and Hymn to Torok are all in that deck. Yeah. As you can see on the left, being able to change the target of that spell.
I believe Divert's from Odyssey.
It is from Odyssey.
Old school.
Yeah,
card.
very old school
about
card.
10 years now.
I remember playing with this card in Old Extended.
Okay.
And it was just fantastic. No one ever saw it coming. Yeah. And I would certainly not expect Jacob Wilson to have it on his radar. He certainly knows of the existence of Divert, but until he sees it, he wouldn't anticipate it.
Sure.
There's also a Sylvan Library in Jake Mondello's sideboard, very powerful in this matchup as well as another source of card advantage. I would not be shocked to see that come in. And both players have Vendilion Click. I think that Vendilion Click is actually a reasonable option in these matchups as a way to Gitaxian Probe in addition to trade with a Nimble Mongoose kind of thing.
Yeah. It's another flyer for, you have 4 Delvers, I have 4 Delvers, but now I have an extra Vendilion Click as a flyer.
Yep.
So
And
that could definitely...
both players also have
factor.
Life from the Loam in their sideboard, which is
very important.
Yeah, very important in this mirror match. It's popped in and out of sideboards, but if you want to be able to resolve your big spells like Vendilion Click,
Yes.
big spells being 3 casting cost spells, you're going to need Life from the Loam to be able to recoup some of those fetch lands and waste-landed duels.
Yeah, and Jacob Wilson does have Zern Orb, like I said, so Zern Orb, Life from the Loam is a really nice combo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I would have to say Jacob Wilson is probably favored in this sideboarding battle, I'll call it.
Yeah, he's got some very interesting choices that I don't think that the normal Rug Delver pilot would be prepared to play against, and they attack the matchup from a very different angle.
Okay.
And I would be, I'm very interested to see if that plan was brought in.
Yeah.
And if it was, how effective it will be. Meanwhile, Jake Mondello resolves a Delver of Secrets on his second turn, leaving up mana for both Brainstorm, Dismember, and can return an island with Daze.
Yeah, Jacob Wilson will sack that Scalding Tarn. We'll probably go fetch up a Tropical Island. I do see a Submerge in Jacob Wilson's hand, so that could play a big role in this game. Jake Mondello might think, hey, I got a Delver, I'm going to try to flip it, beat down, all of a sudden Submerge changes everything.
Absolutely. Submerge also very good in response to fetch lands, of course.
Yeah, definitely.
As both players have a ton of them in their deck, that would be a particularly good use of the Submerge. He doesn't have to use it just yet, so I would not anticipate a Submerge right off the top here.
I think he might actually have double Submerge, which is going to be really good. And Nimble Mongoose is so great here because it's very, very difficult to deal with. You can't bolt it, you can't submerge it. So we'll see if Jake Mondello can find a good answer to it.
Yeah. No Dismember, no Daze, no Lightning Bolt. Once it's down, it's down.
Yeah.
The best way to answer it is a Tarmogoyf.
Exactly, yep.
Which, again, not the easiest thing to resolve when you've only got the 2 lands in play.
Yeah, and Jake Mondello is trying to offer this trade, but Jacob Wilson won't take this trade right here.
Absolutely.
He knows Nimble Mongoose is way better than a Delver, especially when Jacob Wilson has... Wow, he makes that trade. I'm very surprised.
Well, it must be based on his hand. He has the 2 Submerges. He just wants to run Jake out of threats, I think.
I'm pretty sure there's double Submerge. I know it's 1 Submerge and a Stifle, which he's going to Stifle right here. And Mondello's probably going to Daze this.
Yep, I would anticipate
Daze.
Daze
Blue Daze.
See if Jacob has a Daze of his own to be able to return the targeted land. I don't think he does. Oh, he does. Hey,
wow,
check that out. So he can
That's
Daze
awesome.
the Daze, returning the targeted wasteland.
Yeah, and I think that's what he's going to do.
So Stifle still on the stack, targeting the wasteland, and he's going to return the wasteland targeted Daze. And he's going to let all of those resolve, because even if he paid to be able to counter the Daze, as I'm sure he just mentioned there,
All right,
it
there's
didn't
another
really matter.
Delver. I'm still surprised with that block. I feel Nimble Mongoose is so important, and Delver's not as important, especially with cards like Lightning Bolt, Submerge, Pyroblast. You're able to handle a Delver. No one's really able to handle a Nimble Mongoose.
Well, I think that Jacob's game plan at this point is to clear the board as much as possible.
Okay,
Because
that's
he's
understandable.
the one with Tarmogoyf. His opponent is not current, or at least as far as he knows.
Okay.
And he just wanted to get first of all, he wanted the creatures to be in the graveyard to be able to make Tarmogoyf bigger, get out of Dismember or Bolt range, whichever one it ends up being.
Yep.
I believe that there's land, creature, instant. Just land, creature, instant currently.
Yep.
No sorceries.
No sorceries.
So the Dismember is going to be able to take out the Tarmogoyf.
Okay. And now Jacob will draw for his turn.
Insectile Aberration is going to be able to deal 3 damage because of a flipped forked bolt from Jake Mondello's side of things, although he does not still have red mana.
Yeah, this whole game without red mana. I'm surprised Jacob held on to that Submerge for so long, but maybe now's a good time.
I think that holding on until it flips is the correct option here. And there's the Life from the Loam package.
All right, so maybe that was his whole plan. Maybe his whole plan was like, I do want to trade because I'm going to win the long game. I have Life from the Loam, and I think that's good enough.
Absolutely. I think that was once he saw the Life from Loam. I didn't see it in his opener.
Yeah, exactly.
Once he found the Life from Loam, his plan became, all right, I found mine. I also have all 3 of my colors of mana.
Yeah.
This is how I'm going to win this game. And if he finds a wasteland at any point, it's going to be game over. Although right now, it's just going to be an extra land drop.
Yeah. You know, you might think, oh, Life from Loam, why is it so good? He only returned 1 land from his graveyard. Well, next turn, he's most likely going to dredge it, hopefully flip some lands, maybe some wastelands, and try to really pull away from Jake Mondello and have Jake Wilson win this game.
Yeah, Life from the Loam is one of the most powerful card advantage engines in Legacy. There it is on the left. We've seen it as the centerpiece in many decks, most notably by players like Jeff Hoogland, playing the 4-color Loam deck that we've seen win Open Series events, and he's top-8 many Open Series events with it. Seismic Assault Loam was a very popular combo deck in both Modern and Legacy for a very long time. It's actually slightly less played than I would anticipate most of the time, because it's the cards that you need to put around Life from the Loam are just inherently less powerful.
Sure.
Most of the time. Now with the advent or the introduction of Punishing Fire, if there's a Punishing Fire metagame, like a lot of Jund in the metagame, a lot of grindy creature decks in the metagame, it might be time for Punishing Fire to come back. But currently there's so much combo that you can't really be running Life from the Loam, Punishing Fire.
All right, definitely. All right, so there's a Brainstorm.
Jacob Wilson
draws 1.
Yeah, he
draws 2.
He flipped a Submerge to that
He did.
Delver of Secrets.
All right, and there's 3.
Very deliberate with his Brainstorm there, deciding what he needs to find.
I see a Force of Will. That might be pretty nice. Normally, Force of Will is not that great in these types of matchups. Force of Will normally shines against something like a combo deck, but why not?
Now, the reason why he was being so deliberate there was because at each point during that Brainstorm, he could have dredged the Life from the Loam, and so he was deciding, is a random card off the top better than a Life from the Loam?
Exactly.
Jacob decides that it is. He actually has Force of Will still in his deck, which is not typical for Delver mirrors.
But it looks like Jacob has something figured out. I mean, he went 8-0 at the Invitational, I believe, with Rug Delver, and so far he's 6-0 here. So that's 14-0. That's pretty crazy.
It's tough to argue against those numbers. I'm sure that some number were trimmed, but keeping in 1 or 2, I've seen very often.
Yeah,
so.
Definitely.
He hasn't lost a game yet today.
Wow.
My
so
goodness.
So he's 6-0, 13-0 in games. That's amazing.
Quite impressive. Has not tasted defeat yet on the day. There's the other Submerge.
Wow,
putting the Delver back on
so
top.
Good.
Yep. Trying to time walk Jake again, hoping that Jake is out of spells other than that Delver. He does have that Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, it looks like Jake Mondello's hand is the Goyf, Delver, and a Lightning Bolt.
So Jacob Wilson has Force of Will.
Yeah, I think he's going to use it here.
Yeah, to be able to take care of that Tarmogoyf. Much more difficult to deal with that. Jacob Wilson's going to win this race currently. Because he gets to have the attack step first with both players at essentially the same life total.
Yeah, Mondello's going to need to draw something here. Ooh, a Fork Bolt. Still no red.
He also only has 6 cards in his graveyard. So he is not yet at Threshold. So Jacob only falls to 12 instead of to 10. And Pyroblast, after combat, going to take care of that Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, really smart after combat. You might think it's pretty obvious, but some players might get overexcited. They might want to just counter the Delver. If he did, that Nimble would have been a 3-3.
Yep. Just big fundamentals.
Brainstorm will find him a tropical island, a Pyroblast, and a wasteland, it looks like. Would you waste this trop here?
I would not. You want to lock Jake off of red as much as you possibly can. At this point, you see 2 cards in Jake's hand. You assume that they're both red cards.
Okay, I mean, you do have life from the graveyard, so you could go waste, untap life.
So he does end up wastelanding the trop there, and that's a reasonable play if he's just going to sit on these life from the Loam wastelands for the rest of the game.
Yeah, so it looks like Mondello drew a Submerge, which could be pretty good. It looks like Jacob's probably going to dredge the life.
Right. So the way that this works is, if he had done it in response to the draw, since the draw doesn't use the stack, he doesn't have to dredge the creature if he wants it back.
Yep.
So it's not like, all right, I choose to dredge. In response, you have to dredge the thing I submerged. But it's still a very good tempo play.
Oh, it really is. I think Jacob really thought that this game was not so much of a lock, but looking very, very good. Now, all of a sudden, just because of the submerge, pretty much the only draw for Jake Mondello to really keep him in this game, it's a battle now.
Yep, absolutely. Jacob Wilson's top decks at this point are few and far between.
Yeah,
he needs to find a Tarmogoyf to be able to take care of that Nimble Mongoose, or find a Nimble Mongoose of his own to trade.
Now, Jacob Wilson knows his top card is Pyroblast here, so that will flip his Delver of Secrets, and he will dredge Life from the Loam.
So he's going to try to keep Jake off of all of his mana.
Yeah.
Probably keeping this Insectile Aberration back.
Yeah, I think so as well.
And just daring Jake Mondello to attack.
It's tough, though. I mean, he has to know that Jake Mondello has Bolt, has Lightning Bolt, Fork Bolt, whatnot. So Jacob Wilson, even though it might look like he's really commanding lead, he's really not. Ooh, Mondello decides to trade.
Decides to attack, and Jake does not have a land. He has the Life from the Loam in his hand and the Wasteland in his graveyard, but he had his way too late.
Wow.
And now you see Jacob Wilson top decking Tarmogoyf just in the nick of time.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's a pretty good top deck there.
Yeah, it really is. All right, Goyf will come in. Mondello's down to 3.
Honestly, though, any point a Tarmogoyf would have won in the game. So top decking it there was fortunate, but it was not a necessary immediate top deck there. But Jacob Wilson had that game locked up, regardless of when he drew the